young boys.
I know everyone's got important things to do.
You know,
So we'll move along.
What's the county been doing so
Just
far?
to welcome everybody, and also I want to take the opportunity to acknowledge that today is Juneteenth. And we appreciate everyone taking the time to come out on the holiday. In the future, we'll make sure that whenever we approve the minutes, that we take that into consideration. Again, thanks to everyone for being here today. Do we have any new members? Nope.
No new members today?
Oh, fantastic. Okay. With that, I'll read the ethics statement. In accordance with the State Government Ethics Act, it is the duty of every board member to avoid conflicts of interest. Does any board member have any known conflict of interest with respect to any matters coming before the board today? If so, please identify the conflict and refrain from any participation in the particular matter involved. Anyone have any conflict? Hearing none. We'll move to public comment. Do you have any public comment? General public comment. We have a public comment period. Okay.
I will say MPO staff did receive one written comment. In general, the comment was supportive of Hannah help me out if I forget something, but is generally supportive of a standard rails and trails policy to encourage preserving rail lines and putting trails adjacent to those rail lines. So we did receive that. It's our understanding that was also passed on to other community members as well as the governor's office.
Fantastic. Thank you, whoever submitted that. Next, we'll move to the approval of consent agenda. Apologies for missing last meeting, and thank you, Jennifer, for stepping up so quickly. Where I was, magically the tower was on the signal. Pretty traumatic. But we need a motion to approve the May 2025 meeting minutes. I do the whole thing. We'll do the approval of the agenda and the consent agenda. So I need a motion. I'll make that motion. So moved. Second. Second. And we're already ready for a roll call.
City of Asheville, Kim Roney.
Aye.
City of Asheville, Sage Turner.
Aye.
Black Mountain, Archie Portiller.
Aye.
DOT Division 13, Billy Clark.
Aye.
DOT Division 14, Chuck McGrady.
Aye.
Buncombe County, Drew Ball.
Aye.
Town of Kent, sorry. Town of Kansas, Dr. Ralph Hamlet.
Aye.
Fletcher.
Aye.
Haywood County, Brandon Rogers.
Aye.
Henderson County, Sheila Franklin.
Aye.
Hendersonville, Jennifer Hensley.
Aye.
Laurel Park, George Fanta.
Aye.
Madison County, Matt Wetzel.
Aye.
Mills River, Jeff Moore.
Aye.
Montreat, Tom Whitmer.
Aye.
Rural Transit, David White. Town of Biltmore Forest, Drew Stevens.
Aye.
Urban Transit, Larry Harris.
Aye.
Waynesville, Anthony Sutton.
Aye.
Weaverville, Catherine Cordell.
Aye.
And Woodfin, Jim McAllister.
Aye.
Thank you. We do have a full house today. Next, we'll move on to the business, the draft 2026-2035 Transportation Improvement Program. And it also includes the public comment.
Yes, so the main item today is opening the public comment period on the draft 2026 through 2035 Transportation Improvement Program. Per our public involvement policy, that is something that we generally have go to the board, the CCC and the board, in order to open that public comment period. This is one of the major tasks of the MPO, the consideration of the adoption of the Transportation Improvement Program. So just a little bit of background on SIP and the TIP, two of our favorite acronyms. The SIP, the State Transportation Improvement Program, The TIP is just the Transportation Improvement Program that covers the MPO planning area. In general, these are federally required documents. In North Carolina, it's a 10-year document. Just a side note, we are one of 2 states with a 10-year SIP, the other being Rhode Island. These are documents that identify planned expenditures over the next 10 years. These documents reflect the projects, their scope, their limits, the amount of funding that's allocated to them, what funding programs are funding those projects, and the project's general schedule. It is a federal requirement, and it's also required that all regionally significant transportation projects should be reflected in the TIP and STIP. And so that definition goes beyond just what is federally funded or requires federal action. So projects on major routes throughout the region are required to be reflected in the TIP and STIP. Any project with federal funds or requiring federal action is required to be reflected in these documents. And kind of most importantly, and the most important thing over the last few years, is the documents required to be fiscally constrained. So our TIP and CDOT's TIP has to prove that there is a good chance that there will be funding available for the projects that are programmed in these documents. So just to highlight, really the way this works is these are key documents that are needed as part of the obligation of transportation funding, especially federal transportation funding. The TIP and the SIP have to be in agreement in order for transportation funds and federal transportation funds to be accessed in our region. It is a key part of these documents, and it's a key power both of MPOs and NCDOTs to ensure that there is some level of agreement on the slate of projects for a region. So for this iteration of the TIP and STIP, the draft STIP was released at the end of January of this year. We discussed that at the board in February. Division 13 and 14 held drop-in public meetings in February. In terms of moving this forward, we are planning on opening the public comment period for our CIP June 27th, which is a week and a day from today. The North Carolina Board of Transportation is planning to consider the adoption of this SIP at their July meeting. That would come back to the MPO. If for our August meeting, we would close the public comment period on August 20th, the day before our August board meeting, and it would go before this board for adoption on August 21st. We do have a bit of a drop dead date on this item of September 30th, so just not that I'm encouraging it, we have a little bit of a buffer, should there be any concerns or complications. Just to go over a high-level summary, and a lot of this we've seen before, in terms of this iteration of the TIP and STIP, there were no new projects that were funded in our region. Many projects are being delayed, and several projects are being decommitted or defunded in the TIP and STIP. As we've talked about previously, one of the big factors at play is inflation of construction costs, not just in North Carolina, but across the country. The last several years have seen a significant increase in the cost of building transportation projects. So in terms of developing this SIP, NCDOT looked at a number of factors in terms of determining what projects would be committed, what projects would be decommitted, and what projects would be delayed or maintain their schedule. That includes the project delivery schedule, the status of right-of-way acquisition, project seniority, meaning what project has been on the STIP the longest, MPO and RPO project rankings, that's something this board went through a little over a year ago. Project costs, project sequencing, whether or not there were federal discretionary funds awarded to the project, overall funding availability, and other considerations. For our region, there's a number of projects being decommitted in this iteration. In Haywood County, that includes the South Main Street project. That we know is the town of Waynesville's highest priority. The Russ Avenue project, not the project that's under construction, but further to the north from 2374 up to Elmwood, and the intersection improvement at US 276 and Grimes Cove Road. In Buncombe County, a number of projects, including the Sandhill Sardis Road widening, the Swananoa River Road, technically it's in there as a widening, but it's more of a modernization project, and the remaining segment of the Sweeten Creek Road widening. Just to highlight for those who may not have been around for this, that project used to go from Rock Hill Road to Hendersonville Road. This board elected to split the project at Mills Gap to keep one section funded. We did that 2 years ago. Now with the funding situation continuing to be a challenge, that remaining section is set to be defunded as well. Also, the A10A project, that was a planned widening of Future 26 between the UNCA exit at Broadway up to Weaver Boulevard in Weaverville. That project technically has been defunded previously, but just to reiterate, because that happened so recently, but that whole slate will be defunded and put back into prioritization. There's a small section near the New Stop Road interchange to maintain interchange improvements, as well as a short bit of widening in that section. That is the only part that will remain funded as it is today. And in Henderson County, the I-26 and US 64 or Four Seasons Boulevard interchange is set to be decommitted. Just to highlight some of the cost increases that are being experienced, some of them are not much of an increase at all, at least and there's several factors there, when projects got their cost estimates done or updated most recently. But some of these cost estimates, the Sweeten Creek Road going from 117 to 215, Swananoa River Road from 48 to 145, and the Four Seasons Boulevard interchange going from 30 to 143 million. These are big increases. I think there's lots that we can go into there, but just to note, for the state, when these kinds of cost increases are being seen just about everywhere, that is really the heart of the situation that the state is in right now. But all in all, for our region, we're looking at over $782 million in projects being decommitted. That doesn't include the A10A. When you include that, it is in the neighborhood of $1.3 billion of projects being decommitted in our region. And just to note, there's also parts of projects that are being reduced, most notably I-2513B, that's the bridge section of the I-26 connector. In order to reduce costs, some of the project has been trimmed in some places, and one of those is there initially were planned improvements at the Broadway Street interchange. The termini for the I-26 connector, section B, has been moved south, so now that project will not be making those improvements at the interchange. And so now there will be a new project in the next round of prioritization to make improvements at the Broadway interchange. So just to note, even some of the projects that are remaining committed and funded there are still some changes in order to reduce costs. There are a number of project delays, so I'll just go through the ones with where the construction start date has changed. So Section 8C of the I-26 connector, that's basically the section between the I-40 interchange and Haywood Road. The construction start year was moved from 25 to 27. The Blue Ridge Road interchange from 25 to 26. Liberty Road interchange from 27 to 29. Mills Gap Road modernization from 25 to 26. Elsewhere, Jonathan Creek moved from 24 to 25. It's my understanding that project's been let. 1923, which is one of Haywood County's priorities, from 30 to 33. 191 widening project from 26 to 29. And White Street and South Main Street. Just to note, when we presented in February, the delay for both of those, and those projects are coupled together, was from 27 to 28. With a revised version of the STIP, they were further delayed and are now scheduled to begin construction in 29. So one point of emphasis I want to make, just because I've heard this a few times in the community and from a few different sources, is that a lot of this funding is not totally, it's not fluid. There are, in terms of developing TIPs and STIPs, there's some flexibility, but just to know, with state law, for improvement projects, there's generally 3 tiers of funding, and those tiers have limitations and requirements in terms of where those funds are allocated. And so I know that there has been a point made in a few different meetings, as well as a video online, that in order to fund the cost increases for the I-26 connector, the funding has come from more local projects, such as Sweeten Creek Road and others. That's not the way that funding works in North Carolina. The I-26 connector is funded with statewide mobility funds. Projects like Sweeten Creek, Swananoa River Road, those are coming from the regional impact and division needs tiers. So just to note that, and just to emphasize, one point that was made to me is that if the I-26 connector project were to be defunded, just to note, we can't just take that funding and put it on projects like Sweeten Creek and Swananoa. The way the funding works is that funding would go back into the pot of the state and very likely go to Raleigh, Charlotte, or some other interstate project in the state. So just to be clear, that's something I've said a few different times in a few different meetings over the last couple of months. But I get it. It's not everyone goes through state transportation funding as much. So all in all, what we're looking for today is approval from the board to open the public comment period on the draft TIP. And again, we are planning on having that open from June 27th to August 20th. Just to note, our public involvement plan requires 30 days of public comment on draft TIPs. So we will be exceeding our general requirement in that row. Are there any questions or comments?
I'll make the motion, Mr. Chair, to open the public comment period.
Second.
And second? Second. Thank you. We have lots of comments, so nothing that we can say out loud. Roll call.
Asheville, Kim Rhode.
Aye.
Asheville, Dave Turner.
Aye.
Jack Mountain, Archie Portiller.
Aye.
DOT Division 13, Billy Clark.
Aye.
DOT Division 14, Chuck McGrady.
Aye.
Buncombe County, Drew Ball.
Aye.
Houston, Dr. Ralph Hamlet.
Aye.
Lesher, Jim Slayer.
Aye.
Haywood County, Brandon Rogers.
Aye.
Davis County, Kevin Ensley.
Aye.
Henderson County, Sheila Franklin.
Aye.
Hendersonville, Jennifer Hensley. Aye. Laurel Park, George Banta.
Aye.
Madison County, Matt Wechtel.
Aye.
Mills River, Jeff Moore.
Aye.
Montreat, Tom Woodmer.
Aye.
Out of Biltmore Forest, Bruce Stevens.
Aye.
Urban Transit, Larry Harris.
Aye.
Waynesville, Anthony Sutton.
Aye.
Weaverville, Catherine Cordell.
Aye.
And Woodfin, Jim McAllister.
Aye.
Thank you. And also note that whenever we were talking about the cuts to Haywood County and Henderson County, that the thunder rolled in. Next is to the Elevate 2050 project list.
Yeah, and with us we have Joel Strickland from the McAdams team that is helping to lead the Elevate 2050 plan. And just to note, that's the branding for our Metropolitan Transportation Plan, the MPO's federally required 25-year plan for the region. But Joel, thanks for joining us. Please take it away.
Yeah, thanks, Tristan, and thanks everyone for letting me join you this afternoon. Just wanted to provide you with an update today of what we've been working on, how we've gotten to this point, and then also to present to you the fiscally constrained project list, and hopefully we can move that forward today. So, let's see if I can get this off my screen. Yeah. All right, so just a little agenda here for what we're going to look at today. I'll give you a brief overview, as I said, of what we've previously done in some of our previous meetings. I'll talk a little bit about the fiscal constraints and how we arrived at that. Then we'll go over the fiscally constrained project list and talk a little bit about the next steps that we'll be working on and moving forward with from here. So just looking at the review of some of our past meetings and how we've kind of gotten to this point, obviously we kind of started the process with stakeholder engagement back in the summer and fall of 2024, setting up the vision, goals, and objectives for the plan. I presented to you all in January, and we adopted those vision, goals, and objectives. In March, the prioritization subcommittee and reviewed the scoring methodology. In April, we did the draft fiscal constraints and the draft fiscally constrained project list for the first time with the prioritization subcommittee. And we've kind of been working on that throughout up to this point. We had the larger list, and now we've narrowed it down to this fiscally constrained list. And then in May of this year, we signed off on the fiscal constraints and the forecasting, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in just a moment. And then moving on to where we are now, we have the fiscally constrained project list, which I'll show you today. And then moving on from here, and I'll talk about this a little more in detail toward the end of the presentation. But our plan is to open up public comment for the draft Elevate 2050 plan next month in July. We'll incorporate all the comments that we received toward the end of July and early August. As Tristan mentioned, there's also a 30-day window for this plan, just like there is for the TIP. In August of this year, we'll put the final Elevate 2050 plan out for public comment, and then we'll come back to you all in September to hope adopt this final plan and get it under completion. So looking back, I think we showed you this information at the last meeting, but I'll talk a little bit more about it here today. The fiscal constraints, this table looks a little bit deceiving, but I'll tell you the reason why it does. So you can see we've broken out the funding starting fiscal year 26 all the way out to fiscal year 50, and we've got horizon between 26 to 35, which is the near term, and those the projects that are included in that near term are basically just the STIP projects that Tristan just went over with you from the draft STIP. So we're really not programming anything additional for those fiscal years. What we're really looking at now is looking beyond that for fiscal year 36 to 45, and then fiscal years 46 to 50. We have broken them out amongst the funding tiers. So you see over there on the left, we've broken it out amongst statewide mobility, broken it out within the Region G, and then broken it out further, also within each division. And we've broken out transit money, the maintenance funding, and some discretionary funds. You will see there are some discretionary funds that we are able to program between fiscal year 29 to 35, in addition to the forecasting that we have here. Just to give you a little bit of background again, the reason you see the forecasting going down over future years is really the way we did it to account for inflation, and to account for rising project costs. And this is very similar to the way NCDOT programs the STIP. So what we've done, we've factored in inflation at basically 5% over the coming years. But instead of showing higher revenues and then trying to show increased project costs, we actually backed the inflation out of what will be the projected revenues. And then we kept the project costs the same as what they are currently. That way we can program kind of based on what the current project costs are and not have to estimate what they're going to be in the future. And we can use the funding that you see here based on backing those inflation numbers out. So I know that can get a little bit confusing, but it makes it a little bit easier on our end and on the MPO's end, because you're not trying to shift projects around and program projects within different horizon years and then having to redo costs because a project slides from a horizon year. So that's the reasoning for doing it this way. And again, NCDOT practices a very similar way of doing programming the STIP, so it also aligns with how they do the STIP. And then just to note again, as I mentioned before, these 26 through 35 funds are already allocated to the STIP projects that you currently have in the STIP. So we're not putting any new projects in that time frame. So again, I kind of hit on this early, but today's goal is to move forward with the fiscally constrained project list for the 2050 MTP. Again, we have to be done, and the MPO has to be done by September 2025. So we're keeping everything moving forward to achieve that deadline. A little bit about what we've got in this project list. We do have some projects that were originally regional impact projects that will actually cascade down to division needs projects. You'll see that as I go through the list. But you can see over here to the right, this is actually the programming of, or what you see left over with the programming of funds versus the available funding. So we're really just showing here how we're going through the process, what the available funding started at, how much we were able to program, and then what the difference is, and seeing that this is fiscally constrained amongst all the projects included. So first off, I'll walk you through some of the the projects that we've included in the fiscally constrained project list for the MTP. And just keep in mind, any projects that you don't see here, they don't just fall off and disappear. Those projects will be maintained and basically housed within the CTP, the Comprehensive Transportation Plan. So they don't just disappear. Those will continue to be projects that will be monitored as they may become future needs or as they may become more of a priority. But these are the projects that we worked really hard with the prioritization subcommittee on. We actually presented them with several options to figure out how to move forward with fiscally constraining these projects and what their priorities really were. And again, we appreciate the participation and the help of the prioritization subcommittee. They really put in a lot of work on this. And also the MPO staff has been a huge help. So the statewide mobility projects, again, these are the statewide mobility projects. They're really kind of a combination of some I-26 and I-40 projects, along with a rail project that you see there on the bottom of the screen. But to start off with, we have the I-26 connector, which is Project RMTP 56. This is right at I-26, I-40, and I-240, and this is the final interchange improvements. We have I-40 widening from Monte Vista Road to Wiggins Road. We have future I-26 from Broadway Avenue to New Stock Road. Then we have I-26 at the US 64 interchange, and this is for interchange improvements. And then lastly is the rail project that I mentioned. This is the Norfolk Southern line at Riverside Drive, and this is for to install safety improvements for an existing at-grade crossing. Moving forward here with the regional impact projects, you see some of the large scale projects here, and this gives us kind of a mix of projects between the counties. US 25 alternative Sweeten Creek Road from Rock Hill Road to Mills Gap Road. US 25 business intersection improvement at the North Main Street intersection. NC 215 at US 1920 from US 1923 to US 276, and that's a modernization project. Then you have US 1923, also known as the Smoky Park Highway, from I-40 to NC 151 Pisgah Highway, and this is to implement access management and complete street improvements. Then lastly here you have the US 176 Spartanburg Highway Access Management Project from NC 225, which is Greenville Highway, to Upward Road. And this project is to construct median, sidewalk, side path, and consolidate driveway cuts. And then you see we go straight into the division needs. Keep in mind, and you can see some of these projects mentioned here, but keep in mind there's some regional tier projects that we have cascaded down to the division needs. So you see those here, NC 81 Swananoa Road modernization, and this is from Biltmore Avenue to Tunnel Road. US 70 road diet from Blue Ridge Road to NC 9, and again, this is a road diet project with complete street improvements. North Louisiana Avenue modernization, and this is from US 1923, which is Patton Avenue to Emma Road, and that's to upgrade facility and modernize the roadway. Blue Ridge Road from NC 9 to US 70, and this is to modernize the roadway and upgrade intersections. Reams Creek Road modernization, this is from US 1923, which is Weaverville Highway to Ox Creek Road, and that's to modernize SR 1003 to include paved shoulders, wider lanes, and improved horizontal and vertical geometry. And then Sand Hill intersection improvement at Sand Hill School Road, and that's to improve the intersection of Sand Hill and Sand Hill School Roads. And then lastly here you have the Elkwood Avenue modernization, and that's from US 25 to NC 251, and that's a modernization with complete streets. And again, these are Division 13 projects right now. Here are the Division 14 projects. US 64, this is Four Seasons Boulevard from I-26 to US 25 Business, and that's an access management project. And this is another one of those projects that has cascaded down from the regional tier. US 23 Business, which is South Main Street, and this is from US 276 Pigeon Road to US 2374. And this is another project that's cascaded down. Then you have the Canoga Road modernization from US 25 Business to Price Road, and this is to upgrade the facility to design standards, and this project is also cascading down from the regional tier. And then you have US 1923 Asheville Highway Park Street modernization from NC 215 to Chestnut Mountain Road, and that's a modernization project with a roundabout and a road diet on Park Street. Then Hooper's Creek Road from Mills Gap Road to Terry's Gap Road. This is a modernization project. The Berkeley Road modernization from US 64 to US 25, and that's to modernize the roadway and add complete street improvements. The Butler Bridge Road modernization from NC 280 to US 25, and that's also to modernize the roadway and add complete street improvements. And then lastly here, Fanning Bridge Road modernization from Airport Road to US 25, and that's also a roadway modernization with intersection improvements. Now we get into division needs for bike ped projects. And there's a large list of these projects, but you can see those here. Richland Creek Greenway. This is the northern section from Industrial Park Drive to Vance Street Park. The Fanning Road sidewalk from Hendersonville Road to Airport Road. And that first project, the Richland Creek one, is in Haywood County. Fanning Bridge Road sidewalk is in Henderson County. Then you have the Dr. Otis T. Duck Greenway extension. And this is the current northern termini of the Greenway to the Mars Hill University tennis courts in Madison County. Blackwell Drive sidewalks from Champion Drive to New Clyde Highway in Haywood County. And you have the Champion Drive bike ped improvements from School Street to Thickety Road in Haywood County. Then you have the Ocklawaha Greenway from Jackson Park to Blue Ridge Community College in Henderson County. Allen Branch Greenway from Clear Creek Greenway to US 64 in Henderson County. The Church King Street sidewalk, and that's filling in some sidewalk gaps from US 176 to North Main Street in Henderson County. And Rutledge Road from NC 280 to Fanning Bridge Road, and that's also in Henderson County. We also have the Allen Branch Greenway from Clear Creek Greenway to US 64 in Henderson County. The Swananoa River Greenway East from South Tunnel Road to Azalea Road in Buncombe County. The Mills River Valley Trail from NC 191 to the other end of NC 191 is a multi-use path construction in Henderson County. NC 225, the Greenville Highway from US 176 to Brooklyn Avenue in Henderson County. Raccoon Creek Greenway from Waynesville High Tech Center to the Junaluska Elementary School in Haywood County. NC 251 Riverside Drive from I-26 interchange to Woodfin Avenue in Buncombe County. Then Lee's Creek Road from Tipperary Road to Irwin Hills Road in Buncombe County. And lastly, there the main streetscape in Weaverville from Pine Street to Hamburg Mountain Road in Buncombe County. And then I mentioned we have some discretionary funding as well, and this is where those projects come in. Patton Avenue ped improvements from Johnston Boulevard to Old Haywood Road, and this is for sidewalks in Buncombe County. Old Clyde Road sidewalks from Blackwell Drive to Greenberry Street in Haywood County. Bent Creek Greenway from the French Broad River Greenway to Hominy Creek Greenway in Buncombe County. The Lake Julian multi-use path, which follows 280 to the west from the east side of Lake Julian to the French Broad River, and that's in Buncombe County. The Above the Mud Trail from South Main Street to 4th Avenue East, which connects Augusta to the Saluda Grade Trail in Henderson County. The North Blue Ridge Road from US 70 to Craigmont Road, and that's for sidewalks in Buncombe County. US 70 Tunnel Road from New Hall Creek Road to Blue Ridge Parkway, which is sidewalks in Buncombe County. And New Leicester Highway from Mount Carmel Road to Old County Home Road, and that's to construct sidewalks also in Buncombe County. And then there's several more here under the discretionary funding. North Main Clear Creek Road, sidewalks from Baldwin Avenue to north of Nix Road in Henderson County. Ocklawaha Section 4A from the Mud Creek Bridge to Balfour Road in Henderson County. US 70 Swananoa Greenway from Blue Ridge Road to Little Cove Road in Buncombe County. The Park Drive side path from Cascade Street to Mars Hill Recreation Park. And we're missing the county on that one. Sorry about that. But Duncan Hill Road from Signal Hill Road to US 64 in Henderson County. US 70 Tunnel Road sidewalks from Warren Wilson Road to Franklin Road in Buncombe County. The Bent Creek Greenway from the Western North Carolina Farmers Market to the Asheville outlets in Buncombe County. US 74A Fairview Road from South School Road to NC 81, and that's filling in some sidewalk gaps in Buncombe County. Merriman Avenue from the Lake Louise Park to Brown Street sidewalks in Buncombe County, and the Reams Creek Greenway from Quarry Road to Carpin Soccer Fields in Buncombe County. And then lastly there, the West Asheville Rail Trail from the French Broad River west to Emma Greenway in Buncombe County. So that's the completion of the fiscally constrained project list. Again, if there are any of the projects that you didn't see there that were on the much larger list that we showed to you last month, those projects will be included in the comprehensive transportation plan and on that list. So they don't completely go away. They just are not fiscally constrained at this point, and they'll stay on that list for their time whenever they need to be prioritized and move forward into the MTP. So some of the next steps here, obviously after we met with the prioritization subcommittee, and they recommended this list, we were taking it to the TCC and to you all today. We have to meet the September deadline, obviously, to have the MTP complete. So this is a really big step in doing that. The fiscally constrained projects are being added to the travel demand model now. NCDOT is helping us with that. And then we have a draft version of the plan that we're working on currently. That'll be available for public comment here in the next week or so. And we'll have that 30-day window that is currently scheduled for June 27th to July 27th for public comment on the draft plan. From there, we will have a set of public meetings coming up, and we'll present the draft plan to the public. Those meetings have been nailed down now. So the first meeting will be Monday, July 7th from 4 to 8 p.m. at the Dr. Wesley Grant Senior Southside Center. The second meeting is July 8th from 4 to 8 at the Mills River Town Hall. And then the final meeting will be Wednesday, July 9th from 4 to 8 at the Waynesville Town Hall. And those of you that helped us book those dates and times, we greatly appreciate your assistance in making your facilities available to us also. The last few things here you see on the list, August 1st to September 1st is the time frame for the public comment on the final plan. And then September 3rd, we will take the final plan back to the prioritization subcommittee for their adoption. And then we will come back to you all in September of this year with the plan to adopt the final plan at that point. So that's what I've got as far as the slideshow goes and as far as the presentation for today. Again, we owe a great deal of gratitude to the prioritization subcommittee. They put in a great deal of work on helping us put this prioritized fiscally constrained list together, along with the staff of the MPO. It's been a long process getting it all together, but with the help of those two groups, we've gotten it done, and we greatly appreciate that. So if you have any questions, I'll be glad to try to answer those for you.
Thank you, Joel. Anyone have any questions for Joel or any comments about the process or timeline?
Councilmember Roney?
Yeah, I just wanted to put a spotlight and appreciate the effort to redesign the scenario where the train and the road intersect in the River Arts District. That there's one side of the road where bicycles can safely cross, but on the other side, headed from the River Arts District towards UNCA, it's just really dangerous. There's not signage that you're coming up that quickly on the tracks, and there have been a lot of bike accidents there. But because of that, folks who do know it's coming will often take their bike into the roadway. And so this is an opportunity to make the road safer, not just for bicyclists, but also for cars. I have walked, biked, and driven that road recently. And I just really appreciate the attention that's being given to that as soon as we have the available funding and resources.
I'd like to piggyback on that as well. Is changes to Louisiana Avenue that are planned. I do believe we had another pedestrian incident or death actually this past week. So thank you for including that. Any other comments? Thank you, Kim.
So just to reiterate what Joel mentioned at the beginning, is this is really a touch point with the TCC and board. We do have a draft list that we plan to take out to the public over the summer. Obviously, the entire plan will be coming back to this board for consideration for adoption in September. But this is a key touch point, so we do want to make sure that this board is okay with the project list going out to the public. If we receive considerable comments, obviously we will consider adjustments. But really what we're looking for today is kind of a preliminary approval of the list, knowing that it will be coming back in September.
I'll make that motion, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Second it.
Second and third. So roll call.
Asheville, Kim Roney.
Aye.
Asheville, Sage Turner.
Aye.
Black Mountain, Archie Fertiller.
Aye.
DOT Division 13, Billy Clark.
Aye.
DOT Division 14, Chuck McGrady.
Aye.
Buncombe County, Drew Ball.
Aye.
Camden, Dr. Rolf Hamlet.
Aye.
Fletcher, Jim Slayer.
Aye.
Haywood County, Brandon Rogers. Haywood County, Kevin Ensley.
Aye.
Henderson County, Sheila Franklin.
Aye.
Hendersonville, Jennifer Hensley. Aye. Laurel Park, George Banta.
Aye.
Madison County, Matt Wechtel.
Aye.
Mills River, Jeff Moore.
Aye.
Montree, Tom Widmer. Biltmore Forest, Drew Stevens.
Aye.
Urban Transit, Larry Harris.
Aye.
Waynesville, Anthony Sutton.
Aye.
Weaverville, Catherine Cordell.
Aye.
And Woodfin, Jim Callister.
Aye.
Thank you. Moving on to our last business item is the amendment to the Hellbender Regional Trail Plan.
Dana, please take away.
Glad that shows up better than it did.
I changed it.
Great.
We could not see the presentation at the TCC meeting. There we go. So I'm here to present an amendment to the Hellbender Regional Trail Plan. So for those of you who are unfamiliar, the Hellbender Regional Trail is a plan through the MPO that aims to stitch together greenways and sidewalks and bike lanes throughout the region to create a regional system of multimodal connections that allows us to safely move around our region. Right now, there's about 150 miles of planned trails. And this amendment will add the Saluda Grade Trail to the Hellbender Regional Trail. So some background on the Saluda Grade Trail. It is approximately 31 miles from Inman, South Carolina to Zirconia, North Carolina, which is just south of Hendersonville. The alignment would be on the existing and unused Saluda Grade rail line. The partners that are spearheading the trail are Conserving Carolina PAL, which is Play, Advocate, Live Well, and Upstate Forever. A feasibility study for the trail was completed in August of 2024, and the Saluda Grade Trail Coalition, which is those three partners, signed a contract to purchase the rail line also in August of 2024. And there was a supplemental plan done for the Saluda Grade Trail that looked at connections from the terminus in Zirconia to Hendersonville. So this is the map of the Saluda Grade Trail from the website. You can see the southern terminus is in Inman, and then it ends up in Flat Rock near Blue Ridge Community College. So what it would look like to add the Saluda Grade Trail to the Hellbender, we would make an update to the map, both the conceptual map, which we call our subway map, if you've seen it, and then the GIS files. And obviously the amendment is going through the MPO board right now, and it passed the TCC last week. We got guidance from the Hellbender Trail Work Group, which met in April, and they recommended that we include the Saluda Grade Trail. And they recommended including the segment from Blue Ridge Community College to the Henderson County line, and acknowledging that the trail continues into Polk County and then into South Carolina. There's about 11 miles that are in Henderson County, if our Google mapping is correct. So this is the current Hellbender subway map. You can see that the orange line, you can see it better on the TVs, but the orange line runs north to south, and the southern terminus is at Blue Ridge Community College. And the new map, you can see that orange line extends past Blue Ridge Community College to the county line. And so the Saluda Grade would essentially be an extension of the north-south running orange line. So adding the Saluda Grade to the written plan, we're suggesting a standalone appendix that acknowledges the Saluda Grade as part of the Hellbender system, showing what the future system will look like now with the addition of the Hellbender Trail. And to note, more work will need to be done on how the Saluda Grade fits with the Oklawaha extension projects that are already planned, as well as potentially connecting it to the Acosta Trail that ends in Hendersonville. So we're looking for a motion to add the Saluda Grade Trail to the Hellbender.
I move that motion and want to speak to it.
Yes, Secretary McGrady made a motion.
I'll second Mr. McGrady's motion.
Second, you're doing quite well. So I guess
Thank
we
you,
can
thank
do
you,
a
Billy.
roll call minute presentation.
Let me just add, the money for the acquisition, to my knowledge, has been fully funded by both the states of South Carolina and North Carolina. More importantly, the money has been received. And so Conserving Carolina has the money in its checking account, and they're prepared to close this thing next week. The cost came in, I think, $3 million lower because of negotiations related to the injuries to the corridor caused by Helene. And the railroad was willing to lower the cost also if we could do the deal really quickly. And so the money coming out of Raleigh State, to my amazement, arrived within a 2 or 3 week period once things got moving. So there's been some good work done on this. Again, you've got 3 land trusts, 2 in South Carolina and 1 in North Carolina, all working together on it. The most in the way of damages from Helene all occurred on the North Carolina side, not surprisingly. Once it's acquired, at some point in time in the future, perhaps we'll begin working on it. It's been a long in coming, and we weren't on drugs when we came up with the idea.
How fun is that?
Just one quick note that we talked about at the TCC. The actual Saluda Grade Trail is actually just a small part of this addition. The primary addition would actually be connecting the Saluda Grade. And I think there's been some preliminary conceptual work on how to connect the Saluda, which currently goes to Zirconia, into Oklawaha or Hendersonville, either if additional rail becomes available or by some other alignment.
And that would really mean connecting into the Acosta,
Correct.
which would then get you all the way to Brevard, which is pretty amazing if you think about it.
Yeah, that might take a couple of days, at least for me.
Well, we'll get to Asheville too. The Oklawaha is heading north rather consistently here.
Right. So just to note, that was part of the TCC discussion, was that connecting or making the connection between Saluda and Hendersonville is something that the City of Hendersonville staff saw as a big priority that should be reflected in a plan such as the Hellbender.
We have a motion by the Honorable McGrady, second by
The almost honorable Billy Clark.
All right, Asheville Kimbroni,
Aye.
Asheville Sage Turner,
Aye.
Black Mountain Archie Portiller,
Aye.
DOT Division 13 Billy Clark,
Aye.
DOT Division 14 Chuck McGrady,
Aye.
Buncombe County Drew Ball, Canton Dr. Ross Hamlet, Fletcher Jim Player,
Aye.
Haywood County Brandon Rogers, Haywood County Kevin Ensley,
Aye.
Henderson County Sheila Franklin,
Aye.
Hendersonville Jennifer Hensley, Laurel Park George Banta,
Aye.
Madison County Matt Wechsel,
Aye.
Mills River Jeff Moore,
Aye.
Montreat Tom Whitmer,
Aye. With gratitude.
Biltmore Forest Drew Stevens,
Aye.
Urban Transit Larry Harris,
Aye.
Waynesville Anthony Sutton,
Aye.
Weaverville Catherine Cordell, and Woodfin Jim McAllister.
Aye.
Thank you. Thank you.
This-
That was,
This is Commissioner Ball in Buncombe County. I lost internet, so I'd like to be counted as voting aye.
thank you, Commissioner. That concludes the business section of our day. I know that some people have other things to attend to, but we'll move to the informational items. First is state of transit.
All right, so this is the state of transit report, and the idea here is to just give a snapshot of what's happening with transit within the region. I'll just note that portions of this presentation have been corrected following the presentation to the TCC to reflect more accurate data due to anomalies in the data published by the National Transit Database in their public agency survey, or summary, excuse me. We constructed this report using the National Transit Database, or NTD, data as the primary source of system information, and that was just so that we had uniform information about each system. It examines the 5-year period between 2019 and 2023. The reason it stops at 2023 is because that's the last available year in the NTD. NTD does not report its data until the following year, and so 2024 data will not be available until either fall or early winter this year. Just to briefly summarize the NPO's role in transit, the NPO has a role for transit planning and policy development, and that it develops and updates the NCP, which we just went over, incorporating regional transit needs and priorities. It works with local government, transit agencies, and the public to set transit goals and policies, and provides resources to local partners for long-term planning and feasibility studies. It provides funding allocation and grant coordination, and it facilitates the distribution of federal and state transit funding, including Section 5307, urban transit, and Section 5310, mobility for seniors and individuals with disabilities, and prioritizes transit projects for inclusions in the Transportation Improvement Program, or TIP. It facilitates interagency and public engagement and coordinates with regional transit operators, including city and county transit systems, human service, transportation providers, and regional rail initiatives, and engages the public and key stakeholders in transit planning efforts through meetings, surveys, and outreach efforts, and fosters regional collaboration to improve transit accessibility and connectivity across jurisdictional boundaries. In terms of the role of transit in regional mobility. Transit decreases roadway congestion by reducing reliance on single occupancy vehicles, and transit alleviates congestion on major highways and arterials and improves travel times for all commuters. It enhances multimodal connectivity. Transit integrates with biking, walking, and rideshare services, enabling seamless travel options across the region. Investment in park and ride facilities and transit hubs encourage greater transit use. And it provides this transportation infrastructure to expanding transit services by reducing wear and tear on roadways and potentially lowering long-term infrastructure maintenance costs. So this covers a number of systems. The first is Asheville Rides Transit, which operates fixed route bus services within the city of Asheville along with Route 170 servicing Black Mountain and routes that extend slightly into unincorporated parts of Buncombe County. Mountain Mobility, or through Buncombe County, provides demand response and deviated fixed route services within Buncombe County. And then Apple Country Public Transit, operated by WNC Source, offers fixed route services throughout Henderson County. Apple Country Transportation provides demand response services in Henderson County. Haywood Public Transit, operated by Mountain Projects, offers a variety of transportation services in Haywood County, including regular daily bus routes, assisted community transit, demand response services, emergency transportation, and more. And rides are available through set loop routes and by reservation through routes running through the core of Haywood County from Canton to Waynesville, with an option to connect to the much larger Buncombe County public transportation system to the east. Madison County Transportation Authority provides a demand response curb-to-curb transit system serving all of Madison County. Transylvania County Transportation offers demand response transportation services within Transylvania County. And one of the key takeaways here is to understand that we have a mix of transit delivery types in our region. Some systems provide just fixed routes, some provide just demand response transit, and others provide a mix of both. This creates unique challenges for each system, and in some ways creates an apples to oranges problem in attempting to compare systems side by side, and you'll see a little bit of that as we go through the presentation. And then the NTD summary data does not provide separate statistics for each delivery type, but instead rolls them up for each transit provider. So if a transit provider offers multiple delivery types, what you'll see in this report is that they're all rolled up under the same reporting numbers. Just to go over those modes of service deliveries in a little bit more detail, fixed route transit is a type of public transportation service that operates on established routes and schedules, picking up and dropping off passengers at designated stops. A deviated fixed route transit service follows a general scheduled route and timetable, but can deviate within a defined area or distance to pick up or drop off passengers by request, typically with advance notice. And then demand response in transit refers to flexible on-demand transportation service that does not follow fixed routes or schedules. Instead, vehicles are dispatched in response to ride requests made by passengers, typically in advance. So this is just a table showing the information from 2023. We'll go over this in more detail. Just one note here to go ahead and define what a revenue vehicle is. A revenue vehicle is any transit vehicle used to carry passengers for fare-paying service, even if the system is fare-free. This is showing the unlinked passenger trips provided by each of the providers throughout the reporting period. An unlinked passenger trip is a standard metric used in transit reporting that counts each time a person boards a transit vehicle, regardless of how many vehicles they use to reach their destination. An unlinked passenger trip is one boarding of a transit vehicle by a passenger. If a passenger transfers between vehicles, each boarding is counted as a separate unlinked trip. Unlinked passenger trips, or UPTs, can be counted either through automated passenger counters or manually by the operator. And both of those means of counting have an accuracy rate of about 90 to 98%, depending on the operator.
I'm sorry, I have a question. Could you go back to that slide? It's interesting the significant drop-off with City of Asheville 2020. Like you see from a 2019 to 2020,
Yeah, went from 1.9 million to 1.4 million.
Mm-hmm. But it's never really bounced back. Do you have any reasoning why?
It's slowly climbing back,
Okay.
but the big reason we saw the drop in ridership basically across all systems was because of the COVID pandemic, and so we saw a drop in ridership from 2020 to 2021 in most of the systems, and we'll see that in the graphs over the next couple of slides.
Mm-hmm.
And for the most part, the systems have been slowly returning to that pre-pandemic rate.
Yeah, it just seemed like the other ones seem to be bouncing back a lot faster. Observations.
And so due to the varying size and scale of the different transit systems, they can't all be shown on the same graph. They're grouped through the presentation according to scale. The main measure of comparison for today's purposes are the shape of the various graphs, which shows similarities and differences of the experiences of each system. So this does show Buncombe County with that drop in, due to the pandemic, with a slow increase following the pandemic, returning to pre-pandemic levels. And we'll go into this in more detail. This is what was reported to the National Transit Database for the City of Asheville, and we've been in communication with City of Asheville staff to get corrected numbers. So there actually is more of an increase in their ridership than was shown in that original table.
Okay.
This is what was reported to us by city staff, and you can see that it's starting to trail back up to that pre-pandemic level, although slowly on this graph.
Is there a time frame of when that ridership would need to increase before it would affect funding?
Not that I'm aware of.
I'm not totally sure I understand the question. Is that,
Will at some point with lower ridership, will they lose some?
Mm-hmm.
That's the
question.
trend for us.
sorry. So, I mean, it's part of it, but in all honesty, nationwide, a lot of agencies are basically in the same boat.
Okay.
A lot of them have seen decreased ridership since the pandemic and kind of a slow regrowth. Some areas have seen faster regrowth than others. But yeah, I mean, because there's so many transit agencies experiencing the same thing, in general, it hasn't negatively impacted our funding.
Okay.
But Henderson County seems to have.
We love our out-of-country transit.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
No worries, thank you. And then this is for the smaller systems, and it shows for the most part that same trend line with a drop due to the pandemic and then a return to either pre-pandemic level or near pre-pandemic level.
That project seems to be higher than pre-pandemic. I anticipate that.
Yeah.
The ridership.
Where is Western Carolina Community Action? What area is that?
That's the rural portion of Henderson County Transit. Henderson County Secretary has two different transit providers. One is focused on the rural parts of the county, receives rural funding for transit. The other is the urban portion, which is more of the fixed route service.
Okay, thanks.
Give me a second to catch up with myself. I went faster than my notes. This is showing fare revenues for the various systems, and it's important to note that both passenger and organizational paid fares are included in these reporting statistics. In the context of the National Transit Database, organization paid fares refers to fares that are paid for by an entity other than an individual passenger. This includes situations where an organization like a university or social service agency subsidizes fares for its members, students, or clients. The transit agencies report these as a separate category of passenger fares, but on the public side of NTD, they're all reported together. For example, in 2023, Buncombe County had just over 59,000 in passenger paid fares and just over 800,000 in organizational paid fares.
Do you know what the current fare cost is per patron?
For which they're all different for each one.
Say Apple Country Transit, which would be
Apple Country is free.
totally free.
They just went fare free this year. And then I believe City of Asheville's cost per trip is $1. Within the NTD, operating expenses include all activities necessary to operate, maintain, and manage a transit system, excluding capital expenses. We saw an uptick in operating expenses during COVID that, for the most part, systems have begun to even out. This is one of the areas where the variety in transit delivery modes creates an apples to oranges scenario as it relates to comparing across systems, particularly systems that differ in delivery methods. Increased ridership is one major factor that can lower operating expenses per unlinked passenger trip, and you can see that in this graph here. Henderson County shows a relatively low operating expense per UPT, as does the City of Asheville, and we typically see lower operating expense per UPT associated with fixed route delivery. And this is just showing systems side by side in that operating expense per unlinked passenger trip. So operating fund sources, there's fare revenues, then there's directly generated operating funds, which we report on in the next slide. Directly generated operating funds include revenues earned or raised by the transit agency through its own activities, such as fare revenues, advertising revenues, concessions or leasing, and contract revenues, such as contracts with schools or employers. And I'll break this down in graphs, but this shows a summary of each system from 2023. One of the key takeaways is the funding mix used for each transit system varies throughout the region. This is, again, an area where the service delivery method for each system plays a major role. And so when we look at the City of Asheville, we see that the majority of their funding comes from local operating funds. That breaks down a little bit more with Buncombe County, where they still see a substantial portion from local operating funds, but also directly generated operating funds represent a substantial piece of the pie as those federal operating funds. Henderson County is largely federal operating funds with some operating funds by the state standing out. And then I'll just go through each of these systems.
Madison has a very balanced.
I did draw the peace sign on purpose.
You'll see there's a huge correlation between the capital funds expended in Henderson County and the ridership.
So with capital funds expended in the National Transit Database, the capital fund refers to funding used to pay for transit assets with a useful life of more than 1 year. These are long-term investments intended to support and improve transit infrastructure, vehicles, and technology. Capital funds include expenditures for large IT systems, vehicles, and facilities. And so one thing to note in this graph is that you don't see capital funds expended each year. Typically what we see is capital funds expended in bulk, and that would be related to either system acquisition or vehicle acquisition as the system replaces vehicles that have surpassed their useful life. And this is showing when Asheville has expended its capital funds over the 5-year reporting period. And then these are the rest of the systems. And with that, I can entertain any questions.
We can separate you as we were going.
I appreciate that.
I would piggybacking on what you guys said with the ridership. I overlaid the capital funds expended, and your ridership went up whenever you must have gotten new vehicles.
Yeah, this is just something I've asked Stacy to put together. I think this is, in terms of what's going on with transit, we discuss it every once in a while, but I do think especially post-pandemic, there are some interesting things going on with our services, how things are changing or how they have changed. One thing that is kind of hard to reflect here is In our region, a lot of times, transit tends to get a bad rap. I was on a Leadership Asheville panel a few years ago, and the question was, why does our transit service suck? And my counter was, it doesn't. Compared to just about any other peer-sized region and city in the Southeast, our ridership stands out. Our transit systems across our region are playing a pretty critical role. And when you think about the aging populations that we have in the region and the growth in our aging community that we've been seeing, transit plays an especially critical role in terms of getting those people to the destinations that they need to get to, especially when they aren't able to drive themselves anymore or get a ride. And so, just to highlight, there's, the fact that is well over 1 million rides per year being provided to residents in and around our region is something that I think makes this something that, was a reason why we wanted to bring some information forward to you all. And something that we'll continue to bring forward as things change.
I see Kim has her hand raised.
Yes, Kim.
Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you for those notes, Tristan. Also, as somebody who rides public transit every day, I see people of different lived experiences. I see workers on the way to work, people on the way to funerals and weddings and the grocery store and the doctor's office. It's not just folks who can't drive, folks who aren't old enough to drive yet, people who aren't able to drive anymore. But we also have a lot of neighbors whose vehicles were damaged during Helene. So I am noticing, especially in areas like in East Asheville or the Swannanoa River area, seeing more regular riders. And just a reminder that the 170 that serves Swannanoa and Black Mountain only runs once every 2 hours. So it, in fact, is really important for connecting employers with employees and customers. It's really important for our folks needing to access healthcare. But there's so many people riding the bus. And so I just wanted to invite my colleagues around this table to join me in riding public transit and seeing for yourself just how important it is as a public resource and asset.
Thank you, Kim. And it's not I want to piggyback off that. It's not necessarily people who don't have additional transportation. People choose to ride the bus, which I choose to ride the bus anytime I can, or mass transit. Thank you, Kim. Any other comments?
I will say there's a full report linked in your agenda for anybody that wants to look at that in more detail. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out and we can explore this more.
Thank you, Daisy. Next is the I-26 connector update.
And with us today is Nathan Moneyham from NCDOT to provide an update on the project.
And be prepared
Thank
for
you,
questions.
Tristan. Can you hear me?
Yep.
I've got just a short update today, kind of just a status of where we are. Don't want to necessarily rehash things that we presented already, but just give a status update of several different areas of the project. The first one I wanted to focus on was the I-2513 AAAB project. That's the improvements at on I-40 and Smoky Park Highway interchange that is currently under contract and under construction. Some of the current operations that are ongoing there, we've got clearing and grubbing complete. We've done some initial grading and drainage installation and continue to do that. There's a box culvert extension down below the interstate that's been completed. We're working towards some pavement repairs as well. And then as you've seen, probably there's an I-40 eastbound outside lane temporary closure that's going to be in place for roughly about 18 months. Upcoming for that project, we'll also be looking and working towards a closure of the I-40 westbound outside lane, working towards that in mid-July. And again, that's an 18-month duration as well. And the reason for that is that we're moving towards beginning substructure work for the railroad bridge. You see that on the right side of the screen, and that's really the status of where the project will be for a while as we start the major construction work for that new westbound off ramp, including the bridge over the railroad and the tie down to Smoky Park. The completion date I wanted to note is now March 2029. In previous presentations and conversations, it was a couple months prior to that. The shift there is really related to Archer Western, the contractor, and Wright Brothers, the contractor who was doing this work, and around the time that this project was supposed to start was really focused on Helene recovery. So there's a little bit of a time extension that was given there for their focus on Helene in the initial months after the storm. The other project update I wanted to cover was I-2513 AC. That is the future let section from Haywood Road back. From a design standpoint, we are updating the plans with the principles of O&R. That doesn't necessarily mean that we're doing any major design changes. We are not. Really what we're doing is things like narrowed shoulders, material changes, and the things that we implemented into I-2513 BD that narrowed the footprint there. We're continuing those general tenets through the AC project. It's also coordination with the I-2513 BD design and working towards the let in November of 2026. The right-of-way acquisition for that project is ongoing. We've got about 95% of the utility parcels acquired. All contacts have been made to the property owners in that in the project, and utility relocation is expected to begin this October. The status update for the larger project for I-2513 BD. We are ongoing coordination with FHWA on the NEPA reevaluation. The public project update meeting that was held on April 24th is a big part of that. The public comments were received up until May 25th. And those comments are being compiled and reviewed, and responses are expected to be completed by the end of July, and all that goes along with the reevaluation. The other big effort ongoing is the design noise report is underway. Monitoring began in May of this year. Validation and models and draft validation report is expected next month. And then the final design report is March of 2026, currently scheduled. Other design progress, 25% plan submittal is under review. That's basically the same level of plans that were presented at the April 24th meeting. Those have went through several rounds of comment. Next upcoming plan submittal milestone would be the right-of-way plans. Those are in development now and would be submitted in September. We have ongoing geotechnical investigations throughout the area, and we are continuing with early right-of-way acquisition, additional parcels to be evaluated later on this summer, and utility coordination with utility owners and their utility designs is ongoing. There are two other efforts that I wanted to outline that are happening concurrently to the design efforts. The first is the Asheville the Aesthetics Advisory Committee. Those meetings began in May, and they're really evaluating aesthetic elements to be incorporated into the proposed overpass of Patton Avenue. Those meetings are managed by the city of Asheville. They're public. They're held at our office, and also open to public comment and public participation. Some of the concepts that have been discussed are lighting elements, structural elements for the bridge itself, and then future land use. Some of those pieces are more critical, timely decisions that we need as far as structural elements to the bridges. Some will be longer form conversations that will extend moving forward, like future land use and public art considerations, those kind of things. Those conversations will continue on. The other group that is meeting is a stakeholder coordination effort with a group made up of the AIA Western North Carolina, the I-26 Citizens Coalition, elected officials, and city and county and NPO staff. We had our first meeting with that group on June 10th, where we reviewed the findings of the charrette that was held locally and organized by AIA and the Citizens Coalition. We went through those findings with the design build team and the technical units from DOT. A lot of good discussion there about the challenges and the input from the community. Where we are now is that the department and design build team are working to evaluate some of the concepts for feasibility and impact to cost and schedule. We're looking to schedule our next meeting to review those findings back with that group in the next 4 to 6 weeks. We wanted to make sure that we had enough time to fully vet and evaluate and do some design and design work and some cost estimation before that next meeting. The other thing of note is that we will continue to bring regular updates to the MPO as the project progresses, including updates on the outcome of these two efforts here on the screen as they move forward. Questions?
Yes. Hi, Drew Stevens, Biltmore Forest. I've had family work on this project for over a decade, and it seems historically that agreements were made with the City of Asheville and Buncombe County and DOT that didn't get passed along to the contractor, and especially about this overpass. So I'm just wondering, between the NEPA omission that now seems to be covered and sound studies, I just don't quite understand where we are in the process. Has this board approved everything and the light's green, or are there still other discussions besides these public meetings that need to be addressed?
I'll take a stab at least the MPO board portion of this. So the big step in terms of the MPO's approvals that are necessary for this project actually took place over a year ago. And so going back to the draft SIP conversation, having the project in the MPO's Transportation Improvement Program in line with the state is what's necessary in order for NCDOT to pull down the funds for the project. So over a year ago, this board approved an amendment to increase the funding for that project, enabling NCDOT to get the funding obligated, which, Nathan, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe that's the current status of the funding. And so all in all, that funding approval has already taken place.
Okay, and then I'm just a bit confused then. That was approved a year ago, and only a few months ago, the overpass design change was made public. And a lot of smart people worked really hard to ensure the sculpture of our city is addressed and taken care of by doing a trenched design. And I'm just curious, it seems the contractor took on its own design and said, this is better, and it's pre-approved by us?
It was a design to build project.
Yeah. Sure. Nathan, feel free to jump in, but I mean, in general, the MPO's approval is, it's not on every single aspect of the project. We anticipate that the project as it's currently designed would move forward, likely with some modifications. Now, obviously, the modifications that have taken place are fairly considerable, and to emphasize, it's not just the overpass underpass. There was previously another interchange on the other side of the river, as well as additional lanes for 26 that have been reduced since then. So in our conversations with NCDOT, it's our understanding that those have been alterations to the project that still maintain the general purpose of the project. But Nathan, I'm officially at the limit of my words on that. So if you can
Yeah,
jump
so
in.
the changes, and really I think what it goes back to is that the preliminary plans that were shared at the 2018 public hearing, even those had been changed a little bit through coordination with some of the I-26 task force. But once those plans are what are given to 3 shortlisted teams in the design build process as the starting point. The design build process is a process that is confidential, but is intended for those 3 teams, designers and contractors, to take those as the starting point, carry those design further, to include their own innovation and cost savings efforts. And that is where the change to the overpass came from that process. It was a submitted alternative technical concept from one of the 3 teams. And Archer Wright Joint Venture is the team that submitted that and ultimately won the competitive process of the bid. And O&R was something that followed that to further reduce our costs because of the financial constraints. But the changes that you're talking about seeing are really part and parcel to what design build projects are, and the way that process, which is governed by DOT policy, is set up and governed.
I appreciate that, and just for the record, I'm not aware of any local community groups favoring the overpass. Like, no one's out championing that cause, and I know there are several local groups that have citizens that'll be affected by noise, potentially declining property values, and like I said, I'm just a fan of our city. And I think that approach to downtown with that overpass is a sculpture that won't enhance the beauty of our town. So I just want to be on the record for that.
Thank you. Councilmember Roney?
Thank you, Tristan. Nathan and the team at DOT, I just want to say thank you for this update. I think it's really important for us to have these conversations in the sunshine so that everyone can follow along. So it means a lot to me that you're here. I appreciate the work that y'all are doing with the aesthetics committee returning. I know they're very passionate and skillful, and they'll have a lot to offer to the work. And also thank you for meeting with the advocacy groups. I heard that you might be offering up some potential updates from those conversations. And I hope that we'll hear them at the MPO, even though we don't have a meeting in July. If there's a way to send updates to the group so everyone can follow along, would be so helpful. There was a document circulated that, at least with the city and the county members, updates from 2018 to now. And it was really just to have that visual, to be able to talk with neighborhoods about what has happened, what changes have taken place, even those nitty gritty details being in one place. I don't know if that can be a living document so it can be updated so we can keep moving along together without making more work. But a document like that going to the full MPO, I would really appreciate that. Are there some specific changes that are notable that would be possible to lift up here today, or are y'all still tracking those with the different groups that you're meeting with?
We're still tracking those. I think we're not really to any specific decision points. We did identify some areas where we feel like there may be some potential change. We're looking closely at the Hillcrest Connector area, which was an area that the group raised. We are evaluating some of the broader concepts related to the overpass, more specifically some temporary phasing concepts. I think the issue there will be as we evaluate the cost impacts of those. But we're working through that, and we'll be able to share more information moving forward. We're also looking at some specific things that came up in our meeting related to the Burton Street access, coordinating signals, and trying to maintain some of the movement there out of Burton Street that had been lost. We're working as well as doing a reevaluation of some of the design elements for the Hanover Street connection to Haywood. That's just a short list of some of the things that we're evaluating. We're kind of in process with that now. And to your point, I intend to bring the results of all that evaluation back to that group, but as well to the MPO. The document you referenced is something that was the department made and shared with Tristan. We have actually posted that document publicly on our website as well.
Good.
So you can direct people to it. And as we go through these efforts, we'll keep a running kind of start to add to that document as future changes are made as a result of the efforts ongoing, both aesthetically and any potential design changes that we can make.
I really appreciate the update about considering phasing, anything that we can do to bring those folks with lived and professional experience to see what's happening on the ground, but even just communicating with the public, even if it's information that we don't necessarily like or want to hear, that public communication and getting those meetings with aesthetics is critical. As far as the noise, do you have an ETA on when the noise study will be finished?
Yeah, it's the final draft, the final design noise study is scheduled to be finished in March of 2026. What's going on now is basically the monitoring portion of that. It started in May. And really the time frame there is related to finishing final design. We do have a draft noise study. But it's critical that we make sure we get every piece of design locked down so that the mitigation efforts and noise walls are accurate. So that current date is March of 2026.
Thanks. And then I think the last thing I have is some of the neighborhoods that are realizing there will be new noise impacts because of the change of the overpass are also wondering how to voice their concerns that we don't want a noise wall, or the neighborhoods don't want noise walls to prevent them from being able to access their path to work and home, et cetera. So if it's possible to have things like gateways or passages for the noise, whether it's staggered or something like that. If there are neighborhood concerns that aren't getting to y'all through the advocacy groups, things like this example, where should folks direct their concerns and information since the comment period has ended?
The MPO is a good place, but you can also reach out to us directly. Our contact information is available on our website. As well as if you go to the public facing DOT website for the I-26 connector, there is a contact us link there that you can reply directly to.
Thank you.
And just to cover, there are specifically for the Greenway connection from Haywood Road up to Patton. We know that section will have noise walls, but we'll include in the design are brakes for access to the MUP at the specific cross streets through that neighborhood, including the design.
Good to hear it.
I do want to thank Nathan. One thing we requested about a month or so ago was a full accounting of all the changes that have taken place in this project. And so there is a link to that document in your packet. I think it's really well done. But I will just note that there's a lot of changes. And so if you're interested, I recommend going through the document. There are, I think, a lot of changes that, in general have been positive, reducing the size of the footprint of the project. I have not heard too many complaints on that front. Some of the changes that the city requested as part of Patton Avenue. But to note, there have been significant changes, including things like the overpass. There are some properties that I believe have gone from partial takings to full takings. I made the mistake of telling some neighbors that I work in transportation. Never gonna live that one down. But I think, when I FBRMPO board, that's our really regulatory power. But I think besides that, I do think that keeping the discussion going, keeping the information flowing, is very important. And so I do want to thank Nathan and DOT staff for all the work they've done to keep the information flowing, and just encourage that we keep it flowing so that our community members and our elected leaders are aware of what's going on. This is the largest project in SCDOT history. This is the largest project in our region. This is an enormous project. I can't emphasize that enough, and it touches on a lot of aspects, both in terms of highway improvements, community changes, as well as multimodal improvements throughout the project area. So just wanted to add that.
I dare say we will be getting these updates for the next 4 years or so. This is happening. So good questions. I think keeping the dialogue going is imperative. Also, I'd like to thank Kim because she is very much involved with the community on this. And we all know as elected officials, we get a lot of people giving their comments, and I understand she's getting a lot of comments from the community. So thank you, Kim, for sharing the comments and working with your community on that.
Sure thing.
Hey, Ryan, just have to say, appreciate Mr. Stevens' comments very much, and appreciate everybody's comments. And Nathan's work on this especially, he's been working very hard, and a lot of DOT people have. But DOT is clearly in a very open listening mode now, and they're all, as you said, it's an extremely complicated project, and DOT is working on some other huge projects in Western North Carolina right now related to Helene recovery. But we are in a listening mode, and we also have fiscal constraints.
Right.
But we are in a listening mode. We really want to work with this community and all of Western North Carolina. This is Division 14 and 13 project. So anyway, we appreciate the communication.
Open dialogue.
I think the Honorable was ready to agree with me, but anyway.
That's right.
It pains me to do that.
And I guess just another sort of contractual question. I guess the contract's been signed, and so that's locked in, and the contractor has now a ticking clock to get things done as quickly as possible, I assume. And obviously, it's a different financial consideration to trench versus an overpass. And I'm just curious if there's any comment on how locked in that particular aspect is, or is it still about public comment, keep the conversation going, and watch it play out?
I can't answer for the contractor, but I know that they are constrained by monetary dollars. And I don't know what the cost was. For going under, it was significantly higher.
I don't want to get too much into detail because I might miss something, but there was a contract signed, then there was an optimization and review process as a part of the contract, and that's really where we are. That's the part we're in right now.
But we had all the comments in April. They're reviewing and coming back. I don't.
Yeah.
There will be changes, but
there's been no financial change yet, but that really depends on what the project consists of. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for that. Next, we'll go to regular updates. We'll start with Division 13.
All right. I'm Brendan Merrithew. I'm with NCDOT Division 13 Project Development Group. I'm filling in for Hannah Smith today. She usually gives you all your updates.
It's going to be tough to follow in her footsteps.
And she has taken a new position. And this is Doug Phillips. He is our new Senior Planning Engineer. He comes from our Marion Construction Office. He has a construction background, among other things. So we'll be very helpful in this process, especially with all the large projects we have in construction, as he gives updates. I'll just give the updates today. My construction background is not as strong as his. I'll be brief. I can remember what the updates are. We want to give you an update on the new interchange and connector road where the Pratt & Whitney side is connecting to I-26. The connector road, which will be East Frederick Law Olmsted Way, it's on the west side of NC 191 where the Arboretum is, Frederick Law Olmsted Way. The other side will be East Frederick Law Olmsted Way, goes to an existing roundabout. That roundabout will have a connector road that goes to a new interchange, which is under construction as part of the I-4700, I-26 widening right now. But the connector road will let in November, so we can see construction on that starting whatever they can do during the winter, and then hopefully in about the same time frame as the I-4700 widening, which they're estimating maybe will wrap up very early now, 2027, so January or so. Yes,
the interchange, do you know when that's going to be?
It'll all coincide, so that is a supplemental to the I-4700 widening, so it is under construction now, and will just coincide with that, the 4700 project. And so the goal is to get that connector road on that same timeline, to wrap up at the same time. And for I-4700, we'll see one more lane shift, at least for the westbound lanes coming up. June 30th, they will shift over from about exit 37 to the French Broad River. 37 is approximately where the new French Broad Blue Ridge Parkway Bridge is. And so the westbound lanes will shift, and that will now, if I understand correctly, all the westbound lanes will be on their alignment throughout our entire project of I-4700. So you won't see the westbound lanes shifting so much anymore. And then shortly after that, a day or two, where the eastbound lanes will go over and share the space as they were previously doing, so that we can finish the actual eastbound alignment in that section. July 25th is the estimated date to get the Blue Ridge Parkway shifted over to the new bridge. So once that happens, maybe a couple weeks later, we can start demolition on the old bridge.
That has been the biggest question I have received, is when is that bridge coming down?
So July 25th shift to the new bridge, and then within maybe a couple weeks, hopefully, the start of that demolition. And I don't have a time frame on the demolition of that bridge, and it's going to be a while. And by a while, I don't know what that means. Haywood Road resurfacing project. We had a meeting this morning with the West Asheville Business Association. That project has it's been awarded, and we might see some construction starting after the first week of July. Some concrete work that they can do through the summer. There's curb ramps and sidewalk improvements. And then the bulk of the resurfacing, the actual milling and resurfacing will probably start in the spring of 26. It'll be kind of pieced throughout. They have through November of 26 to complete the job. Doesn't mean it'll take them that long. It may mean they work on some parts and then come back to it. That is the window. Those are the construction updates and sort of our, unless anybody has any other questions about the projects, I know we've quite long, we have more updates to do, so I can leave it at that.
The big projects, I know that you're doing lane closures right now, going eastbound.
So is that like, on like 45 to 50 on I-40?
Last night was from Brevard Road.
I don't have an update on that one. I think that might be the same one I'm talking about. I think they're switching just to night.
Yes.
Night closures. That's the same one. And then I-40, which always has been in the news, that's more on the Tennessee side. I just read, I asked around for some updates for this group today and had no timeline. And I just read something, and I don't know how accurate it is, maybe 2 weeks or more is what their preliminary estimate on the work is there. And again, it's more on the Tennessee side, but of course, NCDOT and Division 14 is coordinating with them.
Thank you, Brendan. Thanks. Yeah, just to note, I mean, the downpours, I think we've had 2 or 3 this week that have really been substantial. I mean, I-40 obviously been closed, but I somehow managed to find myself on I-26 Monday and Thursday of this week, and I mean, there was quite a lot of water, and watching the construction crews hustle to move their equipment, it was really something. So thanks to DOT and all the crews on their work on that front.
Next, we'll go to Division 14.
Hey, everybody, it's Steve Williams. Sorry I can't be with you there in person today. Haywood County, I-40. Sure everybody's heard that I-40 is closed again. The word is from Tennessee DOT that should be opened in 2 weeks. transmitted to our division engineer early today. Otherwise, the same construction projects that you've been seeing for a while in Buncombe and Henderson, the I-26 portion in Henderson, the MPO sent out a press release about nightly closures as they're finishing up. Really, it's just some small issues such as some rumble strips being installed, permanent paint markings, that type of stuff. So be looking for those lane closures at night. The Henderson, in Henderson County also, the Green River Bridge, traffic is as it has been for a while, but there's supposed to be a traffic shift sometime later this year. So be there, and there'll be a press release for that as well. At the Henderson County TAC yesterday, Rusty Darnell from the district office said that the Highland Lake Road project, the contractor there has said that that'll be completed before that January 2026 completion date, sometime this fall. So hopefully that will happen. Otherwise, same projects you've been seeing for a while in Haywood and Henderson County. On the any questions on that before we go to project development?
Thank you.
Project development side of things, then just the same projects you've been seeing for a while. If you're comparing dates from this month to the last time that they were posted on the MPO's website, the only thing that's moved out since then, since the previous update, are bridges, and that's just for budget balancing reasons. So bridges continue to move out the let dates for bridges 6 months to a year. So just kind of keep an eye on those. And otherwise, that's all from Division 14.
Perfect. Any questions? Thank you for the update. Next is Daniel.
Okay.
Transportation Planning Grant.
Just 2 quick updates for me. One, we've hired a new employee in my group. His name is John Hunter. He was able to attend the TCC meeting, but he's not here today because we have him in required training. But you're going to see him shadowing me for a lot of meetings. So if you have the opportunity, say hi. He's not getting assigned his own study, so he'll be popping in on a lot of other work. And then second, just thing to talk about, it's not really an announcement or anything, but yesterday I was lucky enough to sit in on a meeting that Pam Cook put together as her new role as the resiliency engineer. And she brought together a group of Transportation Planning Division staff, as well as staff from NC Department of Emergency Management, who have launched a new river basin blueprint tool. I've not had a chance to dig into it quite yet, but it allows other agencies, local governments, to model some of the impacts of policy and plans and projects on flooding and flood risks. And so we're pretty happy to get access to that. We, of course, have become very concerned with flooding and resiliency over the last several years, but all more acutely recently. But also, I'm encouraged by this being more of a two-way dialogue where we can share with them our development plans, what we know about changing land use, changing impervious surface from roadway projects. And I'm hoping it'll be a good collaboration, but it just happened yesterday and still need to mature and see it in action a little bit. But that's all my news.
Any questions for Daniel? Thank you, Daniel. Next is the subcommittee work group reports.
Okay, I won't go through all of them. Our subcommittees and work groups continue to be active. One thing to note from last month, we discussed the Citizens Advisory Committee. So we will be holding a Citizens Advisory Committee meeting to discuss what happens next with the Citizens Advisory Committee. I'll also be bugging Jen and Anthony soon to talk about potential big picture items in terms of committees and structures of the MPO. And so that's our general plan. Prioritization continues to be active with the MTP, and we'll be starting TA relatively soon. Additionally, just some quick federal updates. Just to note with the one big beautiful bill, not just big beautiful bill. One of the things that is going through reconciliation is a proposed fee on EV and hybrid vehicles. In the House, it proposed a $250 fee for full EVs, $100 for hybrid vehicles. Just as a reminder, the gas tax has not been increased since 1993. And so a lot of the effort here is looking at how to increase federal transportation revenues, as the general fund has been used for a lot of transportation funds since about 2008. But also in there is a big effort to modernize air traffic control, and several discretionary programs are mentioned for precision, one of the largest being the Neighborhood Access and Equity Grant, which was part of the Inflation Reduction Act. Also of note, several rulemaking initiatives have been canceled or postponed, including state and metropolitan planning, which was underway, is my understanding, and the plan is to cancel that until there's new federal legislation. So to note, what that means for us is there are several things in current transportation law that MPOs are supposed to do that are not, to say not very specific, I think would even be generous. So there are some things that the rulemaking was definitely supposed to make clear, such as how we are supposed to incorporate housing considerations into the planning process. By law, we're supposed to do that. How exactly we're supposed to do that, I mean, it's nothing new, but we will still be waiting to see. And for those of you who haven't seen too many presentations, I think housing is really important. So besides that, work is continuing on a new transportation law. The existing federal transportation law expires in 2026. So a draft of a new bill is expected in late 25 or early 26. We gave a quick presentation on that 1 to 2 meetings ago. And just to note, some of the higher level things being looked at is consolidating the discretionary grants through the federal government, as well as reductions to transit and rail programs. Some of the discretionary grants that are currently available include the Bridge Investment Program and the Low or No Emission Vehicles Grant. Coming up in August, we anticipate the SMART grants becoming available. Additionally, not quite transportation, but transportation related, there were changes to the Broadband Equity Access and Deployment Program. One of the changes that was made was an item that put a heavy emphasis on coordination between transportation and potential broadband and expansion projects. That coordination has been removed. In terms of state updates, a couple things to note. One is House Bill 336, which proposes to de-annex several properties from the town of Maggie Valley. And also House Bill 1012, the Disaster Recovery Act Part 2. And in terms of transportation, that bill currently has $10 million for the rail division to help assist with some of the repairs to rail lines, and $30 million for private roads and bridges, in addition to what was previously in the first disaster recovery bill. Also, more excitingly, the Acosta, the first phase of the Acosta is planning its ribbon cutting on July 18th at 2 p.m. Just to note here, ribbon cuttings are always fun. We don't get enough of those. But also, this is, it basically already is the longest continuous trail in the region. It is the largest grant-funded project Henderson County has ever undertaken. And this is the largest project funded through MPO direct allotment funds that has ever come to completion. And this is just the first leg of it, between Horseshoe and Hendersonville. So this is a very exciting project. Please come out if you are able to make it.
Where is it going to be?
I actually don't remember that offhand.
Right near the Fresh Market terminus, at the south end of the city, where Church Street comes into, what's eventually going to be a roundabout there, but it will be easily seen. Park in the parking lot, several of them right around there.
Perfect. So yeah, very exciting, big project coming on.
July 18th.
July 18th in the afternoon, I believe.
Yeah, 2 p.m. I think, right?
2 p.m. the speeches start, I believe is the schedule, and 3 is the actual ribbon cutting.
So you don't want to hear me into the first speech.
And Sandy, do you want to provide a quick Strive update?
Yeah, sure. So Strive Not to Drive took place about a month ago, wrapped up a month ago, and was really successful. The events were really well attended, and we have a video to share about how it went. So here it is.
Strive Not to Drive is a series of events, programs, and incentives held in May each year designed to celebrate and promote sustainable transportation. It's a regional initiative in Western North Carolina facilitated by Go Mountain, a program of the Land of Sky Regional Council, and was originally started by Asheville advocates in the 1980s. The goal of Strive Not to Drive is to encourage people in Western North Carolina to reconsider how they get around the region and explore their communities in ways other than by driving alone. It includes a commuter challenge where residents can earn points for biking, walking, carpooling, riding the bus, or even working from home. These modes of transportation increase the resiliency of our transportation network and decrease congestion for everyone on the road. Active transportation and transit increase the health and safety of our community, providing ways to stay connected to each other and our neighborhoods, and giving more eyes on the street. Biking and walking are good for both mental and physical health and fitness, and provides a way to slow down and experience life at a different speed. People who do so as part of their commute report less stress upon arriving at work than those who drive. It reduces our region's environmental impact and carbon emissions and puts less wear and tear on our transportation infrastructure. Although not everyone can bike, walk, or take a bus from where they live, carpooling is another great option. There are multiple park and ride locations around our region designed to allow folks to meet up to ride together or access public transportation from a central location. In 2025, there were over 17 Strive Not to Drive events held in Buncombe, Haywood, and Henderson counties. In Buncombe County, events this year included a Roll Out of Work event for National Bike to Work Day, a Bike Polo Newbie Night, and a free transit day with ART bus service. There was also a bike and walk audit training session to teach participants how to evaluate infrastructure needs and identify and assess potential improvements. There was a walk audit for Lucy Herring Elementary the following morning and a bike bus for students. Asheville also had a ride of silence to bring attention to people riding bikes who have been injured or killed in roadway collisions. There was also a bike in cinema, a smart cycling class, and 2 events aimed specifically at employers to encourage them to provide commuter benefits and learn how to increase their share of employees who bike or ride the bus to work. It was Haywood County's biggest year for Strive Not to Drive ever. They hosted a kids' bike drive to support children who may have lost their bikes during Hurricane Helene. They also had a free transit week and a Bikes, Buses, and Brews social ride, which was the very first outreach event ever for Pigeon River Bikes, a brand new bicycle cooperative serving Haywood County. Haywood Public Transit even produced a brand new commercial for their bus service in the lead up to Strive Not to Drive, and the City of Waynesville did a ceremonial proclamation to designate the week. Henderson County kicked off Strive Not to Drive Week with a social spin, which was Bike Walk Hendersonville's first ever social ride. They also had an outreach booth at the Hendersonville Farmers Market where walk audit trainings took place and visitors could learn more about Apple Country Public Transit, which is fare-free, and learn how to load a bike on the bus. There was also a Downtown Dollars promotion in Henderson County, allowing people to bike, walk, or bus to participating businesses and earn downtown dollars. Studies show that people biking and walking generates greater economic impact than driving. Hendersonville also had its own International Ride of Silence and wrapped up the week with a hiking Henderson County event at Jackson Park, led by a local naturalist and plant expert. Each person who attended Strive Not to Drive events throughout the week was eligible to enter and win a number of great prizes and giveaways, which this year included baseball tickets to the Asheville Tourists, free monthly bus passes, and safety swag donated by Liberty Bicycles. Strive Not to Drive aims to foster long-term behavior change in how people move around our region, to celebrate sustainable transportation, and to create a culture in which driving alone is not the default option. If you or your organization in Buncombe, Haywood, Henderson, Madison, or Transylvania counties want to participate in Strive Not to Drive next time, please reach out to Sandy at landofsky.org to learn how you can be involved. Let's keep the momentum rolling. Thank you so much to all of our partners who helped make Strive Not to Drive possible in 2025.
Thank you. It was a fun experience for our mayor. He got to make a commercial with the asphalt shorts and riding about, so it was a good event. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that was our biggest year yet, so big thanks to Sandy for putting it on and for our first year, making it as big as we've ever had it. It's pretty awesome.
So, any other updates?
No other updates. We do have one more round of public comments.
Yes. And we have public comment? Yes.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Sonia Marcus. I live in the city of Asheville, and I'm a member of the I-26 Advocacy Council, which is a group that's composed of representatives from a lot of different groups, including the I-26 Citizens Coalition, but also neighborhood groups and independent technical experts in urban planning, design, architecture. I wanted to start also by adding my thanks to Nathan Moneyham and the DOT staff that we have been working with. The citizen advocates have been very active since I last came and shared comment with you. We held the community design charrette, which was very successful. We had 60 people who came up to be part of the process with us, along with a number of elected officials. We have also been developing, as you know, recommendations to submit back to DOT, along with, visualizations and drawings and continued work that's happening. I want to take a minute to just thank all of the people who have been involved in this process, and remember that we're all contributing volunteer hours on this to really help our community. Just a couple of things that I wanted to bring to your attention. One is that we have a proposed design concept that is currently active within that process that Nathan described of the meetings that are happening with the group, the stakeholder coordination effort. And I'm calling it the swing concept, which involves swinging Patton Avenue out slightly to be able to maintain I-26 on grade and still have Patton Avenue go over it. We haven't received any feedback from DOT staff so far that suggests that this is not possible. And so we're hopeful that we'll be able to work through the process and get more information about cost. I did want to address something that you shared earlier about clearly the overpass was a lot less expensive than the underpass. That's actually not what the ATC says. It says that there'd be no cost impact from switching the design. From what we understand, the main advantages to having the overpass have to do with the phasing of the project and the fact that, there's an issue with kind of the relocation of utilities. So we actually haven't seen their work in regards to the cost impact. So I don't think there should be any assumptions made about what we know or don't know about where the cost impacts were. There are issues still of serious concern around the bike, ped, and transit impacts of the project. And the only group that we have right now that's scheduled to continue meeting is the Aesthetics Committee. And the Aesthetics Committee really isn't an appropriate venue for us to be having these conversations. So I just want to ask you all to, bring your attention to how it is that we're enabling for constructive citizen input in the process. One more thing to keep in mind, which I pointed out at the Aesthetics Committee yesterday, is that none of the City of Asheville's boards and commissions are currently active. They were all basically put on hold after the hurricane, and the most recent proposal from the City of Asheville is that they be dissolved altogether. So the Greenway Commission, the Sustainability Commission, the Tree Commission, all of these commissions which would otherwise perhaps be a venue for both public input but also for recommendations are just not in existence right now. So we have to make sure, now we've kind of essentially fought our way into the process, but there's no need for people to have to fight to be part of these processes. We want to make sure that there continue to be venues for us to take part. I appreciated your question about sort of what have we approved, what have we not approved, and I've been keeping this in mind as I've been involved in the project, is that our ability to make change in regards to this project has to do with influence, not authority. And there are a lot of channels of influence that we have and that we've been utilizing, and you all have a lot of opportunity for further leveraging that influence. The only other thing that's potentially going to change the nature of this project is a lawsuit. There is a process underway of seeking legal counsel from attorneys who have specific expertise around the federal issues on highway projects. I don't think anybody wants to see this project come to a lawsuit or be shut down, but we do have to recognize that there is that potentiality out there. And I think from my perspective, at least, there is good reason to be concerned about the process that has been used thus far. The next opportunity for public comment will be when the supplemental EIS is released sometime in late summer. And I would encourage all of you to request that the public input process be robust and be longer than what is the minimum required. So I just want to thank you for your consideration of these issues and encourage you to remain active and involved.
Thank you. And also, Joe Menicosi, I see you online still, would you like to make a comment now?
Should be allowed to talk.
Yeah, I believe he's on a meeting. He actually emailed a comment that he asked me to read on his behalf. I do think that y'all should be privy to how they made the decision and what criteria determined how their decision was equal to or better than keeping the highway under. I think they only looked at it from their perspective of building the projects faster, which is the benefit. However, how does that stack up to the impact to real estate, aesthetics, economic development, sound, the cost of the city of Asheville for nuisance policing under the bridge, etc.? I don't think any other consideration was really weighed. Also, the city and county paid pretty significant sums of money to hire Fig Lochner, nationally renowned engineering companies, because the design center wasn't treated seriously by NCDOT. The ADC, which is the Asheville Design Center, and Fig Lochner worked with NCDOT to keep the highway under patent. That was an agreement, and we paid significant sums locally to have proper consultants at the table, not to mention several years of time in city staff and local professionals volunteering their time. It would be interesting to know if this agreement was ever passed on to the contractor, and it would also be interesting to know if that goes against the ATC law, because that was worked out and agreed upon for the creation of alternative 4B. The city adopted the NACTO standards for local roads in the community, and Patton Avenue, as proposed in the design, appears to not be designed to those standards. Also, there was a lot of work that local working committees put in for designs to minimize impacts, and the contractor appears to be ignoring them or not incorporating them. At a more macro level, when we have resolutions, ideas, and input on the design, who is responsible for incorporating them and who is held accountable for ignoring city resolutions and design agreements that are endorsed by public officials? Is it NCDOT or the contractor? And that is a comment from Joe Minicosi with Urban 3. Thank you. Any other comments? None, I will do an adjournment. Okay, and just to note, we do not have a July meeting scheduled. If something big comes up, such as with I-26, we may hold a lunch and learn or a webinar of some sort. But thank you all. This was our highest attended meeting ever. So thank you, and thank you for the donuts. Thank you.
Good seeing you, Canada County.